Hey everyone, this is the second video of the Haunted Barista series. To listen to another part, go ahead and click the card above to go to the playlist for this series. I'm a barista that serves the supernatural. I think my coworker is a goblin. No, I know my coworker is a goblin, or at least something like that. I've never heard of a goblin wearing someone else's skin. Some stories say they can shift into animals, but are humans really on that list? I wanted to explain some things in more detail to you all. First, I do not work Tuesdays or Wednesdays unless specifically requested by management, such as this Wednesday. Workdays are 10-hour shifts. We do not leave the store until it's time to close. I asked what would happen if we did, and no one was sure. But M suggested that Tall Ben would probably take advantage of the situation. I go in at 7 p.m. and we lock up at 5 a.m. That was the shift I was getting used to. The overnights that Richard promised. For whatever reason, Monday's mystery resulted in a change of plans. Richard wants us to open earlier. He was incredibly specific about the time that the store needed to be opened, no earlier than 7 p.m., but now he wants to push back our hours to 5 p.m. That means a 12-hour shift, not including breaks. That also means I get a flex day off. Honestly, I find the idea tempting. It didn't matter what I thought about it, however, as Richard's decision was final. Celine told me that he was not happy about the situation on Monday. She tried to explain that we did work on Monday, a full shift, but that didn't matter. He isn't being unreasonable, though. She explained on my Wednesday shift. You have to know the ins and outs of this weird place to understand why he makes those decisions. Do I agree with him? Maybe not. It is his store, so if you want to keep working here, you'll have to accept the new hours. Celine was already in the parking lot when I arrived. She was leaning against her car, observing Amber unload her boxes of candles. When I got out, Amber called me by name and waved. This time, she didn't offer me anything, nor ask any questions. She got her stuff, disappeared around the building, and presumably set up her little shop. You told her your name? The packet said to answer her questions. Touché. Is that dangerous? Listen, even I'm not entirely sure what Candle Lady is. She sells extremely dangerous candles. She has rules like any other supernatural being. I hadn't realized she was supernatural, but it made sense with the whole candle thing. The name thing, with them having power, is usually a fae thing. If she isn't a fae, I would know. I don't think she cares about human names. She bothers customers too? She bothers everyone that might be able to buy a candle. Drive-through menu lets everyone know that we do not endorse Amber's sales, and are not responsible for whatever happens should someone approach her. I got there early again by 15 minutes. That's 4:15 on the new shift. With Tall Ben having followed me home, I was itching to get out of the apartment and around people who knew how to deal with him. Anyone who saw my last post is aware that Celine was there with Tall Ben, or at least her likeness. I assumed that it was only a lure to get me to step out, but one of you suggested that it may have actually been Celine who had led Tall Ben to my place. Did I have something to do with why Monday went wrong? Was Tall Ben tied to it? I wanted to ask her, but I held warnings to heart. You said to keep my mouth shut about it, and considering how new I am at dealing with the supernatural, I'm going to listen. We small-talked, but the time on the clock was coming quickly. It was 4:22. The Wednesday crew is a bit different. Little John won't be in the kitchen. You'll be meeting Johnny today. One thing to note, you are the only one with any fixed days off. Lucky if you ask me. Did she mean Jonathan? Barrow had mentioned him on Monday. Why do I get a special shift? We already had someone like you on Tuesday and Wednesday. Someone like me? She smiled. Johnny. I'll be the judge of that, I quipped. Cars were pulling in, so I would be making that judgment soon. Barrow arrived, followed by M. We went to the door waiting for Jonathan. With seconds to spare, an old minivan turned into the parking lot at far too high a speed. The car almost tipped over, then missed a parking spot to hit a handicap sign hard enough to bend it. I was expecting a person to climb out, but I was unpleasantly surprised. I'm not sure if they were just calling this thing Jonathan, or if that was an early customer. It approached to set the door just as Celine was pushing it open. I let it pass by, then followed Barrow and Em inside. Once in the lobby, Celine gestured at the thing. New guy, Johnny, new guy. That wasn't my name, but I didn't much care. Hey, I offered awkwardly, denying the hand that stretched out. You two know each other, Axel? Em asked. I certainly hoped I did not know, or had not known, whoever the thing was wearing. It was as if a person had been skinned in their pelt, treated to be worn as a costume. I mean, I could see the damn thing's eyes. It was like a poor-fitting mask. The bone structure underneath did not fit the skin suit at all. The thing was short, misshapen, and far too fat for the person it decided to wear. Ugh, I can still smell the thing. Piss. It smelled like piss. When it opened its mouth, it was extremely wide, bigger than the person it wore. It had to be the absolute worst disguise I've ever seen. Nah, I don't think so. Nice to meet you there, Axel. It tried its hand again. Now, I try not to be insensitive. There are all sorts of people out there, and more recently, I'm discovering that the scope of shapes and sizes is far beyond my tiny understanding. But surely this was not Jonathan. Surely they intended to introduce me to a normal person. Well, not normal, but at least human. Okay, I'm not trying to be rude, but I started. A car pulled into the parking lot, dragging everyone's attention. I only looked briefly, but was quickly grabbed by the Jonathan. Listen, bub. Its voice changed completely. Instead of passing like a chain-smoking person, it now sounded like a toad learned English. Don't ruin this for me, or I'll skin you up and put you in my closet. Capiche? Ruin what? It spoke quietly. I'm hiding low, and I don't need a limp dick like you blowing my cover. Getting them all fooled isn't easy, especially the pixie. Pixie? You're a dumbass, aren't you? Look, what even are you? The car in the parking lot was idling and apparently lost the group's interest. They went to their stations and Jonathan turned to do the same. As he did, he opened his mouth wide and gave a few chomps. Did he want to eat me or skin me? Both sounded unpleasant, so it seemed in my best interest to keep his new identity a secret. I don't know what exactly I was keeping to myself, however, as all my coworkers had eyes. They could see that whatever the thing was, wasn't their Jonathan. When we open, there are a few things that are pretty important to have done beforehand. To paint you a picture, I'll start off with stations. Depending on who you ask, the front counter is the easiest to learn. Since I am more experienced and seeing as I worked it on Monday, I was given drive-through. Barrow was on the bar, making any drink that had espresso. Either the front counter or drive-through, assuming they weren't busy, could make the frozen drinks. We use pre-made base that has espresso, and anything else that didn't require steamed milk. With Jonathan in the back making sandwiches. God, I just realized that thing is making food for customers. We had all our bases covered. Before opening, we want to make sure those frozen drink bases are good to go. It would be pretty stupid to run out in the middle of a rush. They had already stocked them up the night before, so we were good on that. Sweet and unsweet tea, I had to make a pitcher of both. Brew a pot of drip coffee, then a coffee of the day as well. Our normal drip is a medium roast, just like the drowsy student. The daily coffee changed. Today's was a dark roast, Colombian, this time. Not that that matters to you all. Our lobby has booths and chairs. At night we put the chairs atop the tables. Em had already finished flipping them back, so we were pretty much ready to open. Celine went to her office after unlocking the door and hitting the open sign. Her job seemed to simply consist of defending the store and employee base from random attacks. Since one happened on my first day, I'd say they are probably common. I felt more comfortable with her there. As long as I followed the rules, she would see to the rest. The car was still outside, though once Celine informed the supernatural world that we were open, a man stepped out. A tan coat, short hair, beard, something about his jawline, his nose, his eyes. This was a thinking man. I was certain I was not looking at some monster or cryptid. Calculated, he scanned the parking lot before making a move. I made the assumption that he must have not been to the drowsy specter before. That was for 2 reasons. He was entirely suspicious, as well as he wouldn't have known that our hours had changed. Regardless, he made his approach towards the door. Barrow and I grouped up near the bar to watch him come in. To my dismay, I smelled piss and up came the squatter. To my surprise, he started to hurry back to the kitchen without a word when he spotted the man that was approaching. The door squeaked open, rang a bell, and closed behind him. "Welcome to the Drowsy Spectre," I offered as our usual greeting. He moved to the front counter, eyeing the empty establishment. "Dr. Fields." A badge which Barrow examined. "An inspector," Barrow shook his head. "But how did you know we changed our hours?" "Didn't. Never been this way." He put the badge away. "Naturally, I'll need to see everyone working right now." Of course. Jonathan? Celine?" Her office opened and she spotted the man and rolled her eyes. "Again?" "I guess so," Fields replied. Why on earth was a doctor doing inspections? Jonathan didn't come up, so Barrow called again. "Jonathan, come on!" Out came the little ass. I guess it was nervous. The disguise was majorly out of place. Only one eye hole was lined up right, the nose was down by its mouth, and one leg was rolled up to its knee. How the hell was anyone falling for that? Still, Celine, Barrow, and Em stood with Jonathan, as if nothing was amiss. "And your names?" Barrow introduced everyone. "Looking for somebody, not your usual suspect. He's been breaking some rules. Been a real pain in the ass to track down." Was he an inspector or a detective? "Stopped at a few places like this, almost had him at a little gas station." "Who is he?" Barrow asked, intrigued. "Bill Goth, a goblin." "You said he broke some rules?" "Sure," Dr. Fields shrugged. "Whatever. Seen him?" "We haven't seen a goblin, but of course I don't know if I would recognize one. They make pretty good disguises," Em replied. I glanced over at the goblin, who had to be Bill Goth. She couldn't be serious. That was the worst. Never mind. Anyway, Dr. Fields grinned at Em as if she had said something funny. "You wouldn't?" "Oh, you know?" "You aren't hiding it very well." Em shrugged. "Well, that's your opinion, mister." "Doctor." He turned to me. "And have you seen anything strange? Anything noteworthy?" I just started. Even better. Dr. Fields waited expectantly. "And?" I glanced at Bill Goth. Look, I wasn't certain if he had killed Jonathan, and if I'm honest, the poor thing did look absolutely terrified. That and Dr. Fields was kind of being a dick. "No, sir, aside from normal stuff." "Normal." Again he chuckled. He moved towards the door. "I'll be keeping my eye on things. Got a few other places I want to look." With his left hand he flicked a card. I couldn't help but be impressed when it landed right on the front counter, next to the register. "Call me if you see Bill Goth. Be seeing ya." With that he left them to their work. Thankfully no one else had come in. Hartman was nowhere to be seen. It appeared that even supernatural forces weren't magically aware of the new hours. Of course, Barrow did say she isn't consistent. I turned to Bill Goth. "Okay, I saved your ass, and you stink worse than a rest stop bathroom. You owe me some explanation." My coworkers were taken aback. "Hey, don't talk to Jonathan like that." Em came to his defense. "Axel, calm down, man." Barrow, too. Celine, however, was suspicious. "What do you mean?" Bill Goth leaned forward and sneered. "I don't know you shit." "Oh, maybe I should tell Dr. Fields that." "No," Bill Goth begged, as soon as I moved towards the counter. "No, not that." "Care to explain, new guy?" Celine wasn't patient. "I mean, seriously, guys, he's a goblin. Jonathan is a goblin, or I guess a goblin is wearing Jonathan." Em burst with laughter. "No, you're joking. I would know that." "Okay, first, he is a goblin. Second, why do you keep saying that?" Her laughing slowed down as she glanced at Barrow. "No reason." Barrow hadn't said anything. I didn't see him silently go behind the counter, nor did I see him pull out a silver coin from underneath the front register. He tossed it on the ground near Bill Goth, who could not resist diving down to catch it. "Oh," was all Em said. "Yeah, that's a goblin." Barrow crossed his arms. "Goblin wearing one of our coworkers." Bill Goth, silver coin in hand, realized he'd been caught. "Joke's out, huh?" Celine rubbed the bridge of her nose. "What? How did you? You didn't look like that before." What can I say? I'm a master of my craft. He bowed. So what about Johnny? Did you kill him? He turned on me. What? No, I didn't kill no one. Goblins ain't about killing people. Then we'd have no one to mess with. Nah, I found the bloke in the woods. He'd been there a day or two. So you decided to wear him? Barrow relaxed a little bit. That was your master plan? That shitter of Fields was on my ass, so yeah, best plan I could think of. But goblins don't wear human disguises. Besides, I would've, or should have spotted you. Belgoth looked up at Em. Yeah, you should've. Losing your senses a bit being around all these normies. But if it was that easy to spot you, why didn't Dr. Fields have a silver coin or something? It only made sense. If I was hunting something that loved silver that much, it would be incredibly easy. That seems like common sense. Yes, good questions, kid. My best bet, he can't go near silver. Tells you he ain't human either. Belgoth brightened the eye holes of his costume. So what do you say? Can I be Jonathan for a bit? Now, before you gang up against me, think about it. Jonathan is dead. Who's gonna make you sandwiches and shit? I can do that, and no one will bat an eye because I'll be in the back. You need me. We don't need you, Celine snapped, but she sighed and nodded. But we do need someone in the kitchen, and it is too late to call another employee in, so sure, why not? Yippee. The goblin jumped, a hand in the air. There was no way. You're serious? He's not human? Celine crossed her arms. And what's wrong with that? Well, for starters, he's wearing our dead coworker. Celine hesitated. Yeah, that is kind of bad, I guess. Plus, he isn't human. He's still a person. Not a normal person. She didn't like that. And if I were to tell you that you were the only normal person working, well, that wasn't true. Em and Barrow were people. I only doubt Celine's humanity because of last Tuesday night. You aren't normal? Look, I know you guys said to be careful, but it was the perfect chance to get some answers. But she walked away, so yeah, I should have listened to you guys. I lifted my eyes to Barrow and Em. What does she mean? He nodded at Em, who stood next to him. Us. What? They look normal. Em started. She's a pixie, Barrow answered for her. I didn't need your help, mister. No, pixies were small. I know the media gets folklore wrong a lot, but surely they didn't just look like normal people. Yeah, Em was short, but not very short. What is this, some sort of hazing? They were serious. Come on, you can't convince me that pixies aren't, like, tiny flying people. I took a giant potion, Em stated, matter of fact. I looked her up and down. You're short. She crossed her arms. That wasn't very nice. And you? I asked Barrow. Yeah, I don't think you're ready for that one. He chuckled. Get a few weeks under your belt and we can touch that one. Okay, I'll be honest, I didn't like that answer. But what am I supposed to do? As the shift went on, it eventually got dark. We were never busy, but there were just enough people trickling in to keep me attentive. In between tasks, when no one was in the store, Barrow and Em would tell me stories about their time at the café. Those would make interesting posts, so I will certainly bring them up later. Something I am learning is that there is a difference between humans and people. Em was a person, Barrow was a person. Yet, as I was recently informed, they were not humans. Barrow was something, and Em was a pixie. I didn't really know what that meant for them, nor did it seem proper to interrogate them on it. I preferred to treat them no differently than I had before. They welcomed me onto their team with open arms. It was only right I keep an open mind. Tall Ben was at the window and scared the shit out of me. His big head stared down at me from the top left of the drive-thru window, and when I saw him, he jerked his head in greeting. I know this is technically against the rules, but I opened the window. Do you actually understand English, or do you just mimic? Nah, I don't speak English, only American. Tall Ben grinned, as if he'd made the funniest joke ever. I wasn't in the mood. Why'd you follow me home? Have you done that to anyone else? Do the people see you? I hesitated. What? When you go home, do the people see you? Such an odd question, one that I didn't really understand the meaning of. What do you want from me? For once, Tall Ben seemed genuine. He leaned down, as if a grand secret was being revealed. Milk. I make a special milk, but I am all out of meat. If you won't come outside, then let's make a deal. You get me some meat. Lots of meat. I will answer questions. What does milk have to do with meat? I know how milk is made, okay? I watched a lot of videos, read stuff. Just give me the meat, and I'll answer one question. See, I know a lot of folks out here in the woods. Folks that know things. I'll tell you. Bro! Barrow shouted. What the hell are you doing? I looked down and realized I was about halfway up the counter and about to tip out the window. Tall Ben cleared his throat awkwardly but said nothing. I quickly backed down, planting my feet on the floor, and drew a deep breath. Meat, huh? Like I said, any meat will do, even yours. With that, Tall Ben hurried off into the dark. So, no more rules then? His tone wasn't angry, it was afraid. You know, DeGuire didn't follow the rules. He was our friend. Now look at him. He followed me home. Apparently the rules aren't very strict if the monsters can break them. That changed Barrow's demeanor completely. What? Tall Ben followed you home? Yeah, he was outside of my apartment door. I left out the part about Celine. Tried to get me to go outside. I almost fell for it. I've never heard of that. He's been trying different things. Recently he's been making puppets of people we know. That's what we thought DeGuire was when he came back. That may answer why I saw Celine at my apartment, but I was still on guard. Came back? I thought you said he bought a candle and got fired. Come on, Axel, you can't be that thick. He didn't get fired. I mean, you got a good look at him. Do you think severance caused his eyes to turn yellow? No, he didn't get fired. He bought a candle. Now he has changed. We didn't know he was alive until he stepped through the front door a few weeks ago, begging us to take his place. DeGuire is a last name. Barrow turned away. Yeah? What's his first name? Why don't we use that? I don't know what Amber's candles do. I don't know what they are made of. I don't know what sort of creature she is. What I do know, however, is that if we say DeGuire's first name now, he shows up. We can get rid of him, but it just isn't any good for any of us to see him like that. We can't help him, lest we want to trade places with him. Since we don't know what that means, I won't let anyone so much as try. I glanced back to the kitchen, where Bilgoth worked away in Jonathan's skin. Do we really have to work with that thing? Selena's right. If we don't have someone on all stations, we're screwed. For now, at least. He can stay. But does he have to wear Jonathan? He's got to look like one of us. That was fair, but also too disgusting for me to agree with. What about the real Jonathan, then? Like I've said before, high turnover around here. He was only on for a month or so. So turnover means death. That was morbid. Not always. I'm had a customer, so Barrow went to the espresso bar. But most times, yeah. No other noteworthy supernatural things happened, at least not big enough to spend time writing about. Hartman didn't come in, which Barrow said was strange. Tall Ben did come back. He tried waving me into the woods. Nope, not going to happen. When I got off, I got my phone from my box. Richard had texted me. Celine told me about the situation with the goblin. That answers some questions. I really appreciate you doing that for me. Was that what he meant when he said to keep an eye open for anything out of place? The skin suit didn't even come close to fitting. I simply replied with a yes, sir, and went home. That was the Wednesday shift. I also had to work Thanksgiving, which I had no heads up on, the day before Celine told me. Thankfully, I have no family to speak of, so I was going to be home doing nothing anyway. I was also granted Friday off, seeing as I worked Wednesday. I guess Richard didn't want to pay anyone overtime. I'll tell you all about Thursday in a bit, but I've got a whole lot of nothing to get to. Maybe I'll play the 2018 God of War now that it is out on PC. I need to do something to keep myself from looking outside searching for Tall Ben. I've got to be able to sleep at night. Something he said stuck with me. Something about people seeing me. It made me realize that I'd not spoken to anyone outside of work since my first day at the Drowsy Spectre. I'm not super social. okay, not social at all. So that wasn't a big surprise. For some reason, it still bothered me. I've got to decide if I should get meat for Tall Ben. Honestly, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. I want some answers, but is it worth it? I don't know. Anyway, I'll get back to y'all in a few days. Hope Thanksgiving went well. And if you see a goblin in a skin suit, maybe don't let it know that you know. I'm pretty sure Bilgoth would have done good on his threat if everyone else wasn't there. I'm a barista at a cafe that serves the supernatural. The store and staff disappeared for 5 days. For you, it has been 2 days since my last update. For me, it has been nearly a full week. 5 days to be precise. 5 days that apparently never happened. Richard closed the store today. We had a meeting a few hours ago, and boy, do I have a lot to tell you. Where to start? Bilgoth worked a few more shifts. Our customers didn't seem to mind him. I think the rest of the team forgot he was a goblin again. For some reason, thankfully, I am not affected by whatever magic he has used on the rest of the staff. I can think of no reason as to why, but Bilgoth seems to resent me for it. By resent, I mean hate. I am the unstable variable in his plan by just existing. That plan being hiding from Dr. Fields. Tall Ben doesn't see him as meat, I guess, because he pays the goblin no mind when he goes out back for a smoke break. Yeah, the goblin smokes a pipe. If he becomes a problem, I have a plan. There's an important detail that he is not aware of, and that is written on the rule list. The ever-growing spoken rules that you learn on the job can't be hidden from Bilgoth, but he never saw the new hire papers. That is an advantage I plan to both keep to myself and save for a bad day, when I get too tired of smelling garbage for 12 hours. I learned the reason that Tall Ben followed me home was because I'd technically never left in a way. It is all so confusing, so I will explain to you what Richard told all of us at the store meeting. I'll make another post about what happened during the 5 days. I carpooled with Celine. If it wasn't her, I would have never actually gone to the address that Richard provided. It was out of town in a rural part of Riker Valley. To help you picture things, Riker Valley has one city and a town. Rose Hill and Riker. Riker sat at the very southern end of the valley, only a few minutes' drive to a larger city. Rose Hill was to the north of Riker and was a dot by comparison. The rest of the sprawling valley is untamed woods, and the occasional farm. So when I saw the address was far outside Riker and in a wooded country, I was obviously nervous. No, I don't think Richard would murder me or something, but maybe, I don't know. Anyway, we pulled up to the cabin. No one else was there, save for Richard, obviously. His white truck sat in a long dirt driveway. I noted that it was nearly 4:30 when we arrived. Em and Barrow arrived together. I had to repress cheering when I noticed that Bilgoth had not gotten the message, seeing as he had no phone. The goblin in a Jonathan costume would not be attending the meeting. That was when a new car pulled in, belonging to someone I had not met yet. A young woman stepped out, one that I assumed was human. I know, she's probably a lizard person or something. She ran up to Em and Barrow, a big smile on her face, and spotted me. "We've not met. I'm Evangel." She stuck out her hand. I shook it. "What days do you work, then?" She glanced at Em and Barrow. How much does he know? Her whispering was completely ineffective at masking her words. "Enough," Barrow shrugged. "Only Saturdays and sometimes on Tuesday. They need a human working there every day after all." "Huh?" Again she looked to Barrow. "You said he knew." Barrow held out his hands towards the front door. "It's 4:30. Was this meeting held to the same standards as the cafe? It would seem so, as Celine unlocked the door with a key and held open the door for each of us to enter. Still no sign of the goblin. Inside, the cabin was normal. Nothing noteworthy, nothing unnatural. A fireplace already burned near where Richard waited for them. He had 2 recliners, a couch, and a wooden chair. Obviously, he sat in one of the recliners, rocking slightly near the warm fire. I sat on the couch, as did Evangeline M. Barrow sat on the wooden chair, unfazed by the clear lack of comfort it provided. John relaxed on the bricks of the fireplace. When we were all seated, Richard spun his recliner around. "We've got a problem, everyone. Axel, you're new, so some of what I say might not make much sense. Hell, it'll be new information to all of you. What each of you probably know by now is that Jonathan is dead. Bilgoth the goblin did not kill him. Goblins don't kill, they torture mentally. Then again, goblins don't really wear people. Anyway, we did not catch it in time. Some of you know this, some not, but the drowsy specter requires a specific balance of employees. Each of you knows what you are. Until recently, we had 2 humans working on shift. That is required. For 2 weeks now, Jonathan has been replaced by Bilgoth. None of you could possibly understand the damage this has caused me, save for Celine." No one replied, allowing him to go on. "The drowsy specter does more than just serve coffee. When the balance is off, things go wrong. I worked at the shop when Dwyer was missing for this very reason. Because Bilgoth isn't human, the balance is off. That's why some of you had an extra Monday. It is also why you were all stuck for an entire week. I'll get to that, I promise. But Jonathan, Bilgoth didn't work Monday." Richard glanced at me. He didn't have to. The damage was already done. There was no way for him to know, but that doesn't matter to me. Bilgoth has been taken care of. "So everything is fine?" Hopeful as ever, was immediately shut down. "No, nothing is." Richard adjusted. "The damage he did cannot be reversed. None of you, save Celine, know enough about Riker Valley as a whole to understand the café. Not even you, Barrow." Then he hesitated. "Look, I know this won't sound convenient to everyone, but I have a proposal. I need to know some things won't get worse at the shop. I procured some apartments near the drowsy specter, ones that I can attest to the safety of. I will personally pay to have the humans among us stay there. That's Axel, John, and Evangel." That was completely absurd. "No disrespect, Richard, but we are working at the coffee shop. Even if it's a haunted one, surely you can't be doing enough business to afford to pay for housing for the 3 of us." Celine laughed at that, but Richard gestured to stop her. "I can afford it, Axel, I promise you that. You'll be but a minute from work, and if you think about it, you'll be making more, because you won't be paying rent." It wasn't much of a choice to me. All I would need to do was see the place, but even if it wasn't the best, I would have accepted. Living that close to work was a dream, and I'd seen that drowsy specter got enough business to stay open. I valued my privacy, sure, which is why I didn't put my real address on my application, but I would be willing to trade that for such a great deal. Tall Ben knew where I lived now, after all, and the chance to change that was appealing. I don't know if he's able to follow me home. Now that we've solved the missing days issue, I'd still sleep better, even if it was placebo. I'll let you 3 think about that. Next, there is the matter of the missing week. That and a Monday. As you know, we've pushed back our hours to 5 p.m. I had to do that since we weren't open on Monday. I can't do the same thing with the 5 days you were trapped. Celine, you know what that means. More rules. She sighed. Exactly. I'm sorry, I'm lost. I was. How was any of this our fault? He was adding new rules because we got trapped? Richard leaned forward. We have the balance of humans and other things to keep new entities from latching onto my cafe. It is sort of a seal, if you will. One I designed a long time ago. Without it, the cafe is just a place that serves espresso to the supernatural. With it, the cafe becomes a shield that holds it all back from the rest of Riker Valley. That doesn't explain what happened to us, though. I went back to my apartment. I left the shop. How can any of that affect me when I'm not even there? Because it isn't just the cafe. Tell me, before now, had you ever been on that side of Rose Hill? Or that neck of Riker Valley? I hadn't, but he seemed to know this already. The wilderness beyond that cafe, down that old road behind the shop, is all part of it. Tall Ben, Tom, Hartman, even Amber, I think. Most of our customers, too. Whatever is causing it, the rift that brings forth the creatures from beyond, wants to expand. You were caught in its construction. That didn't make any sense. Fortunately, Celine explained it better. The reason we don't leave during work hours isn't because of Tall Ben or any of the other cryptids out there. It's because we won't be leaving our own world. Think of it as a pocket of our own world, only entirely incomplete. When we drove home, we mapped it out and expanded the reach of the things that live in the woods. All because the ritual was messed up. We were missing a vital piece, Johnny. So we were in a pocket dimension for a whole week? Yeah, pretty much. Time doesn't work the same in all places, especially realms that don't follow normal rules. Normally, leaving on time ensures you get back to where you're supposed to be, Richard began. But since the ritual never really started, then all the rules you already followed don't mean anything. Look, there are 2 reasons I offered the apartments. 1, because I want to make sure everyone is as safe as they can be. I can't protect anyone in their own homes. 2nd, to make sure Riker's curse doesn't spread to the city. It already plagues Rose Hill from time to time. If no one lives in the city, it will have a harder time reaching it. We aren't safe at home anymore? I already knew that, seeing as Tall Ben paid me a visit. So even if we were to quit, we'd be haunted too? A liability. Clearly, that made Richard nervous. Look, I never intended this. I have a process that hasn't failed me yet. It worked. Everything worked. And then Dan had to... Richard instantly realized what he'd done. A knock at the door, then another one with more power behind it. No one moved until the 3rd round of knocking came, then a voice. "Why don't you let us in, Ricky?" It wasn't a deep voice, nor an aggressive one. If it hadn't been for the looks on everyone's faces, I would have thought them to be his parents, irritated at being left out in the cold. Still, even after it spoke, no one moved. "It's best for you to open the door, Ricky. You've always taken the easy way." Richard glanced at us, making a clear, "don't say anything" face, then moved to the door. Before he opened it, he gave us one last look to keep us still and quiet, then turned the latch. On the other side was DeGuire, but he was not alone. Someone behind him pushed DeGuire inside, then stepped through the threshold. A man of ebony skin, hair black as the night outside, and golden eyes. When he smiled, I was nearly blinded by the whiteness of his teeth. Perfect teeth, mind you. Their new guest was dressed in a fine suit, no tie, with a necklace that hung to his chest. It held a triangle pendant with a T through it, cutting into 3 sections. It pointed downward and caught my attention because I'd seen it before. That, however, I will explain later. "Riker." Richard stepped back to let him in fully. "What are you doing here?" "You called my boy Dan, didn't you? It's only polite that I see him along. It's dangerous these days to walk alone." He leaned back out the door. "Amber, get in here. Amber, let these fine folks see your wares." Amber Bucker? Sure enough, the candle lady stepped through the door with a box of, well, candles. "Everyone, let's get comfortable. We've had a long talk, and lots to settle." When Richard hesitated, Riker stuck out an arm towards the recliner. "Take a seat, I insist." "No one's going to buy a candle," Richard stated, as he obeyed Riker's command. Riker smiled. "Oh no, they aren't for sale. Call it a demonstration." Amber was placing candles from her box with a gentle smile on her face. She caressed my cheek as she passed me. For some reason, that soured Celine's face. "I understand your little ritual got mixed up. Goblins are tricky, huh?" He approached Evangel, then shooed her out of the recliner across from Richard. "We're friends, right, Ricky? Seeing how that is, I can't help but feel your frustration about the shitty little goblin. Tell you what, make a deal with me, and I'll add a little bonus to it. I'll see to it that the little shit is punished beyond your satisfaction. How does that sound?" What would either of us want from each other? Well, until today, nothing at all, aside from one another's untimely demise, I assume. "I think you're on schedule to do that first, however." He chuckled and glanced at the room, to see if anyone else would do the same. Tough crowd. Anyway, it might come as a surprise to you, but I rather like the spot we are in. That cafe brings just the right kind of people my way and gives Amber plenty of exposure. You've done nothing but try to tear down everything I do, Richard countered, so forgive me if I doubt you. Degwire, whose name I am assuming is Dan, stood near the door. He had only glares for the staff of the drowsy spectre. But it appeared Riker had him healed like a good dog. Those same yellow eyes poured both hate and what I saw as longing at everyone in the room. What happened to him? I'm not certain I will get those answers soon. That is true, but if my master wakes up, then the fun is over. He will wake up, that is certain, but we might as well delay it and enjoy ourselves. Look, I want to keep doing what I'm doing. If the god of ochre awakens, it'll all be work for me. I don't want that. You don't want that. Let's strike a deal. In what way would I benefit? Don't close the shop and run. I know you've been thinking about it with all the stress and all. If you close it, Richard, I'll only be forced to get back to work. Do you know anything about the god of ochre, huh? I doubt it. He would not be good news for you, not for anyone. What is in it for you? I'll leave you alone. Your cabin, your house, your family, all safe out of my reach. He reached out a hand which lit up in yellow flames. You have my word. That was both a threat and a promise, an ultimatum, one that Richard would not be able to refuse. All I have to do is keep running the place, just as you have been. I'm not the only one expanding, so I can't help you with that. I'm just along for the ride. If you stop your good work, then I'll have to work from the top of my list. That would be pretty inconvenient for you. Richard still hadn't taken the deal, so Riker snapped his fingers. The candles that Amber had brought lit, and all the other lights went out. Long shadows danced with each flicker, and Riker's eyes seemed like wicks themselves. It's a good deal, Ricky. For a time, Richard simply stared into Riker's eyes. Then he glanced at his staff. It wasn't hesitation. He already made up his mind. How could he do anything but accept? To my surprise, he didn't. Instead, he shook his head. That shocked even Riker, who was slow to close his hand. You sure, Ricky? Goodbye, was all he said. Riker frowned but did not delay in standing up. The candles went out, the electricity restored, and all was relatively normal. He left without saying another word. Dan followed him like a trained pup. They did not, however, close the door. No one stood up to do so because Amber was still there. She'd pulled up a chair to join the group, sitting awkwardly close to me. I hadn't realized it at first that she had placed her chair right behind the couch. You're cute, you know, she smiled. Want to come over? I can show you how I make my candles. That counted as a question, I think. No, thank you. She nodded. That's fine, maybe another time. I'd like to get to know you, Axelwhite. With that, she stood and left. Unlike Riker, she was polite enough to shut the door behind her. The cabin itself seemed to let out a sigh when the door clicked. That was my fault, everyone. I'm very sorry. Celine was quick to forgive. That was a pretty stupid slip-up. You had me worried with Riker, letting him go on like that. I genuinely wanted to hear what deal he was cooking up. John stared at the door, silent. When the visitors left, Barrow was quick to sit with him. That was John's brother, after all, that Riker ordered around. Was this what happened to those that bought candles? I doubted it, as Degwire couldn't have been the only one to buy one. Riker would have a small army, I'm certain. Perhaps he only brought Dan to weaken Richard's resolve. Or perhaps it wasn't he who brought Dan, but instead hitching a ride when Richard accidentally summoned Dan with his name. Who is Riker? I asked. Em leaned over. The landlord, sort of. Richard waved an arm. We can talk about that later. Only thing you need to know is to stay away from him. It'd be better for everyone if you ran off with Tall Ben into the woods. It should go without saying, too, and began. But don't go out with Amber. Yeah, I'm not that desperate. You're desperate? That was a poor choice in wording. No, I mean, I wouldn't say that. Em leaned back and gave Celine a look. I think I just suggested something I completely didn't intend, which went with the theme of my life. After all, I put myself in this place, in this valley, in this job. I didn't even know if Celine was human. or if that glance Em made towards her even meant anything. If I'm honest, my dating life is the last thing on my mind. When I have a giant trying to convince me that he can make milk out of a few pounds of bloody meat, I really don't want to see what kind of milk he is talking about, but I do want the deal that Tall Ben offered. One question, any question, and he'd answer it given time. There was too much silence. So, is it always this active, working at the Drowsy Spectre? No. Richard seemed relieved that someone broke the silence. I think that's all thanks to Bill Goth. You've had a rough first few days, huh? Considering I'd lost nearly a week of time to a pocket dimension, I'd say so. I guess. What happened to the goblin, though? Don't you worry about that. And so I didn't, at least for the moment. I did plan on writing down some of the highlights of what happened on the 5 days I was trapped in the Valley's curse. But if I'm honest, nothing major really happened. It did explain why Roger hadn't come to the shop to take care of the goblin earlier. However, he couldn't, because we weren't there. The entire shop had been gone until it just popped back up. If I had a family to go home to, if I'd had anyone that mattered in my life, then I'd have been livid. Instead, I guess I'm a bit curious, and a good deal scared. Maybe I'll do a small update before work tomorrow, assuming Richard opens the shop back up. Let you know some little things that happened over the week I was gone. The 5 days that never happened. Yeah, I know a week is 7 days, but let me round up a bit. I'm having trouble writing in the dark. I keep imagining Tall Ben watching me from behind the curtains. In between the little slat where they don't quite meet. I can't focus on writing anymore, so I think I'm going to catch a nap. Today's lesson? Don't make a deal with a candle demon. Whatever the hell that is. I get the feeling Richard made the right choice, that he somehow has the advantage over the thing called Riker. There is one person I could ask, but a few of you had said not to give meat to Tall Ben. One person said it might be worth it. I'm still not sure. I guess Bill Goth isn't a threat, so no need for my plan. Kinda disappointed, to be honest.